So this week you can see I've got a much taller container to work with, and we're going to revisit the diagonal arrangement that I did in the Back to Basics series of videos. This time I'm introducing some different flower types and more variety of flowers. So welcome back. I hope you're still enjoying these series of tutorial videos. We're looking today at the diagonal arrangement, which is part of the line arrangements. So it's not a mass design where we have a mass selection of flowers. It's a simple arrangement using a line material or an implied line created with your focal flowers that runs diagonally on top of your container. Now, I'm going to be using a plastic little tray here and a small, less than a third of the block of floral foam. And I'm going to be using it sideways because if you think of a horizontal design or a diagonal or anything where you have lots of side movement, the majority of my flowers are going to be coming from the side of my foam. So I need the widest part of my foam on either side. If, for example, I was arranging in this shape with my foam having the narrower part on the left and the right, then it limits me to the choice of material I can put in here on the side. So what I'm going to do is have the narrower section of my foam at the front and the back because I'm going to have less material, and I'm going to have the wider part of my foam on the side because it gives me a greater amount of space. My foam doesn't need to be tall because again my placements are coming out at the side. But what you could consider, if we just lift that up higher, if you want to bring a very severe angle of your diagonal flowers down on the side, then you need your floral foam to be taller. So you really need to consider it at the very beginning, the angle that you're going to come out with your overall flower arrangement shape. For me, I don't think my angle is going to be too pronounced, so I'm going to keep that short. Might cause me a bit of problem as we go along, but we'll soon find out. And what I've already done on the top of my container there, I used some of the Floral Fix, almost like a plasticine substance, and that will give me a surface just to a DMI plastic container onto. There's not a great deal of room or depth on the top of this, probably what would have been a candlestick. It's almost an Art Deco styled container. There isn't a great deal of depth on the top for me to place some foam, so that's why I'm using this plastic container. And then to make sure we don't allow that container to fall off, give it a little bit of extra security, I'm going to go with my floral tape just to add an extra fixing. And this time I've gone from front to back with the tape, and that is to allow me that clear gap on left and right sides to get my flowers in. If I had brought the tape from one side to the other, then I would be blocking the main area where I want to put my flowers. So again, it's a little bit of forward thinking to where you want to create and place your flowers to give you your outline shape. Hopefully that's nice and secure, remembering that the flat part of my vase is the front and this is the back, and remembering not to move my design around as I'm working. Now I've got a few different flower material choices that I've bought today, and some of them I think are going to be too large. These are begonia leaves, and I haven't used begonia, I don't think, so far in any of the videos. And I've actually ordered these from the wholesalers. You can of course grow begonia quite happily in the garden. I don't have a huge variety of them to choose from. So I bought some in to use, but they are very large. So I'm a little bit concerned that they might be too big in my focal area here. So I might have to go to plan B as we work along. But that was my original choice, the begonia leaves, but they've come in far bigger than I was expecting them to be, so we might have to abandon them as we go along and think of something different. My other choice would be the fascia, and again the fascia would have covered quite a large proportion of my floral foam at the front, but it gives me a much heavier and busier flower material in the centre. So whereas I'm trying to create quite an elegant diagonal line through the arrangement, I think visually this is going to be far too big. What I could do with these is cut them down so that they're smaller. So again, I'm allowing myself one or two options to work with should I not get the style that I'm hoping to create. Now my flower choice is a Gerbera. This one is called Moet, after the champagne. A beautiful, soft sort of apricot-y peach. Even though this is a round flower type, what I will do with these is create a visual line throughout the arrangement, and it will strengthen that diagonal shape that I'm trying to create. Then I have a very pretty rose, and again I'm always attracted to this limey sort of green colour of the roses, and it has a reddish pink outside edge to it. I can't remember its variety name, but I will link it in the box below. And it gives me, it's still a round shape, but it's got far more dimension to it. So the Gerbera is quite flat, very much two-dimensional, whereas we have a different shape and a different form to the rose. So that's the rose. Then I have a carnation, and I love these lime green carnations. They're one of my favourites to work with. This one I think is Green Goblin, and again, another round shape, but it contrasts in texture and colour, so it introduces something different into the arrangement. Then to give me some line and to create my outline shape, I have the dried Bullrushes, which I often keep here in the studio, and it would have been nice if I'd have had greys or silver colours to go with my container, but I didn't have anything that I felt really emphasised that line shape, and I thought it was a really good example for you to be able to copy. Then we've got the Cordyline, and this is the Cordyline Cappuccino, and you might have seen me use this in a posy arrangement, but I'm going to use this one as a single leaf to exaggerate and to emphasise my line. So this will give great visual movement. It'll make my eye travel forward and back. And being that my begonia leaves are very large, then I might use these rolled at the focal area to help cover my foam and to cover that plastic container. Now, foliage that you might not have seen before is actually a modified leaf. This is Leucodendron. You probably will have seen them in a red colouring that we often refer to them as Safari Sunset. Great example of line. This is going to really help me to exaggerate my overall outline shape. And again, if you think about the thickness on that stem there and the thickness of all my flowers, it is really important that you allow yourself plenty of room on the side to add in your various materials. And I have, this is Coccylus. You might not have seen me use this before. Again, I'm a little bit concerned that it's going to be too busy, too heavy for my design, but we see how it comes together. And again, as an individual leaf, I might use them in the focal area just to help cover my focal point. They can be a little bit visually a bit heavy and not a very good example of line. This would be better used in a massed design, but I do like the individual shapes of the leaf itself. And that's my flower choice for today, so hopefully that's going to work well and will produce an interesting design. We're going to start creating my outline shape, and if you'll remember, I've mentioned that we're working on the widest part of the foam, so we've got quite a big section to place our materials into. Try and remember that in this instance I have a front and a back to my arrangement, and I need to remember to keep the vase flat. Otherwise sometimes you forget a little bit and you start twisting and turning your base as you work along. Okay, so let's move that back, make sure that hopefully it's all seen quite clearly in the camera, and I'm going to start with two of my Bullrushes. Now ideally I probably should have had something that was silver to pick up on the colouring of the vase, but I felt that this was a really good example of line and something that if you choose an item like this, then you're halfway through to creating a really good design. And we're going to bring these out in that diagonal line through the floral foam, and I'm looking to attach or insert into the foam, and you'll see there I'm roughly halfway through from the front to the back, so I'm about halfway along, and I've rested it on top of the plastic container, so that is naturally created my downward movement, and because it's a line, hopefully it's making your eye travel up and down. And what I now need to try and achieve, remembering to keep my container quite square, is that my diagonal line is almost like a continual shape from one side to the other. What I don't want to do is change the profile of that angle, because then I don't have that diagonal line quite as clearly as when it almost looks like it's following through the centre of the foam right the way out the other side. Now, gladioli would work well in this design, although you'd have to remember that the tips of the gladioli will move away and towards light, so you'd have to pinch off the ends. But line material like delphinium, liatris would be superb in this, and if you've got foliage like New Zealand flax in your garden, then again you would be able to create this lovely diagonal line. And then what I'm going to do, now I find it, I don't know why, I find it better to work from my left to my right. So what I'm going to do then with the leucodendron is almost repeat that line from one side to the other. Now what you need to consider with this design is that it's a line design, so we need to keep that quite severe line running through the middle. We don't want to overfill this middle section so that it becomes more of a mass design with a vast quantity of flowers. So remember that nice, elegant, slimline look. And that is how it's going to be from your side. And I'm going to make use now in what would be the back of the design. So what the part I can see at the moment, I'm going to use the cordyline just in the back again to repeat that shape. Now I'm going to show you what would happen if I used the Coccylus, because I think for me they're going to be too full. If we add the leaf here at the back, it becomes very heavy and very visually dominant, so I lose that almost streamlined effect that I'm trying to create through the middle. But what I might be able to do with this is bring it much closer to my floral foam. I'm going to remove one of the leaves off there, bring it down closer to the foam. No, I'm not even sure if I like that either, because straight away it's given me quite a wide section, and then the middle part of my arrangement will straight away become very full, and that's what I don't want to create. So what I will do is just take off the leaves so we can work with them individually, and then they're almost then repeating the shape of that cordyline leaf there. And this, I think, is one of the problems with this line design, is that it's very hard to finish this middle section without overfilling it, and you have to be quite selective with the choice of material that you're having. So we'll just continue that through from one side to the other. And again, if you look at it visually, let's just remove this tape. If you look at that visually, it's very much a positive line coming through the middle. There's no fuss and fullness here in the centre. I'm creating real dynamic movement from one side to the other. Now this is where I need to consider what I'm going to use in the focal section here. And what I will do is I will show you how these leaves are really going to make it too fat and too dominant there in the middle. But sometimes until you see something created, it's hard to visualise what I'm trying to create, and I keep popping out from behind the arrangement. So that's the larger leaf that I originally thought about using in the middle, and you can see that the rounder shaped leaf is really detracting away from that pure line that I'm trying to create through the middle. So for me, that is really the wrong type of material to pick. So what I'm going to do with those, we'll take them out and we'll use the rolled leaves in the centre instead. So the cordyline, which at the moment is a really good example of line, so we'll bring a couple more of those in towards the centre. And then what's happening is the colour, there's a good colour link between the cordyline leaf on the outside and then the cordyline as it comes in there to the middle. Just move that over to one side so I can work more elegantly without leaning in and out. And then to change the shape of the leaf, I'm just going to bend it back on itself and pierce it through the main part of the leaf. And these will hopefully work much better here in the centre. Now what I've also got to consider here at the front is that I'm covering my tape and my plastic container. And again, the angle of the camera is slightly lower than the position I'm looking at it from. So you might be able to see a little bit more of the plastic tape than ideally I would like to show. But I can work on that as we come through the arrangement and as we add more flowers in. So 3 rolled leaves there in the centre. I know if you're looking at it from the back, we've still got an awful lot of foam to cover. And another reason why I encouraged you at the very beginning not to have a huge piece of floral foam there in the centre. But hopefully you can see that without using too much heavy, visually heavy material in the middle, we've been able to maintain that line through the centre. And then I can create a link. So this would be rhythm and repetition with the outside of the design. We're bringing the colour of the bulrushes through the middle so that the colour is brought through the middle. And I'm lucky with this one, it's quite short, so I can add this in at the front without making it too very visually dominant at the front. If I had a longer bulrush like this and I used that out towards the front, it would make the design far too deep for the proportions we've created with the length of the design. Okay, so now we can bring some of the Leucodendron a bit closer towards the centre as well. And again, you'll see that nearly everything I'm using is a good example of line. And hopefully we've got that continued shape from one side to the other. And the remaining, or the leftover pieces I should say, of the Leucodendron, they would be ideal now to come in at the back to give me some weight. So we obviously need actual weight. So again, if we think about those principles and elements I've been talking about, because I'm on a tall container and I'm adding lots of materials here at the top, then I need to give some weight, some actual weight, so my arrangement doesn't tip over. And then a couple more of the leaves towards the back. Now I need to be really mindful that I'm not overfilling this section here, but trying to cover my foam. And I think on this type of design, this is often where the difficulty lies, is covering your foam. Ooh, that's not quite going where I want it to go. Covering the foam, but not spoiling the very slimline look that we're trying to create. There we are. And we'll just put this last cordyline in at the back as well, because that will help me cover space. So the materials there at the back, we're not quite covered yet, but we will be by the time we've added all our flower material in. So adding material in at the back does sort of 3 things. It covers the floral foam and stops the foam dehydrating. It also brings actual weight to my design, which is really important when you've got this tall vase. So it stops the design tipping forward, evens out the weight to the back, and it also makes your eye travel through the design and makes it 3-dimensional rather than a very flat arrangement. And if I go back towards the front, you'll see that I have rhythm of my colour of the bulrushes coming through the middle. I have repetition of shapes with my cordyline and the Leucodendron. So that again is making your eye travel through from one side to the other. And then I just have a small piece of the Leucodendron. And this is almost like completing the link, completing the jigsaw there at the front. So rather than the Leucodendron being on the outside with no link in the middle, we now have just one of the open heads there in the centre. And again, with the sections cut down short, I can use them at the back to cover in my design. Now at the moment this design is front facing, so the main flower combination is going to be at the front, at the position you're looking at it now. But there is nothing wrong with you doing this design so it can be seen from both sides. I often see it on table arrangements, table centres. It's maybe not my favourite design for the centre of a table, but it is something, if you did it the same front and back, you could use it as an all-round design. Okay, so we do still have my tape showing, which I'll have to work on, and we've got some of the plastic container showing there as well. Now what I might do to improve that, and I probably should have thought of this at the beginning, is I could spray that with some silver paint and then it would look like it was part of the container, because hiding this is going to cause this side of the design to lose the line again. It's going to become over full and overstuffed. Or I could use just a single leaf. Now the Coccylus lasts for ages out of water. What I could do with this is just roll it round and attach it with some of the floral fix, and that then will hide that plastic container, because at the moment from this side the plastic base is very visually dominant, so be a little bit mindful of that as we work along. Okay, so now we've got a really good outline shape created, I can start adding some of my flowers, and we'll start I think with the carnation, this lovely lime green. And the principles are exactly the same. You start with your smaller flowers on the outside, if we have a choice. Doesn't always work. We start with our smaller flower on the outside and we work our way through to the larger flower in the centre, just to strengthen the focal point. And I'm looking again to start my flowers somewhere different, so that they're not on exactly the same level as the foliage or another flower type. So we have that visual stepping of the flowers as it comes along. And then I need to pretty much balance that off with one of the green carnations on the other side. So, you know, you can lay the two alongside one another so you get a rough idea of the length. And again, I say it most weeks, don't worry too much about them being exactly the same. We're just trying to create a little bit of symmetry without it being perfectly matching. Now I've just knocked out one of my leaves, we'll pop that in a second. And now you can see, especially if you're looking at it from the side, why we needed to have a much wider piece of foam there at the side, because most of my flower material is coming out from the side section, and if we'd have had a very narrow piece of foam already, I would be having problem fitting those materials in. Okay, so if I just turn this round for you to see now, the angle of this one isn't really repeating the shape on this side. It's almost a little bit like a dog leg. Instead of it coming down as if it's following through the foam to this side, it's kicking up slightly. So I need to readjust that to make the visual line run more smoothly through the middle. And then if I turn that round now, you'll see that's far more pleasing. Almost looks like it's one continuous flower from one side to the other. So a really elegant design, quite a simple choice of flowers, and I have chosen a few different varieties to use, but you could of course just use foliage or just carnations, and if carnations is the only thing you can pick up at the moment, or maybe a small bunch of roses, just use the 10 roses to create that visual line rather than mixing up the flower varieties like I've got. Okay, so most of that pretty carnation is in. There we are. So we haven't got that very severe line through the middle. It's not a very rigid line through the middle. It still has a little bit of movement and some. So you'll see that even though these two flowers on the end created the illusion of it being one line through the middle, I have staggered out the carnations through the middle because a very severe line becomes very stiff and very stagnant, and we want something that's more pleasing to the eye, something that's softer and more gentle. Right, okay, so what we're going to go with next, I think the rose will be my next choice. For some reason I've only picked up 4, so I might have to pop off and find another one in just a second. And again, I'm going to look for the ones that are the least open, so that would be my first choice. That one is far bigger in its look, the petals are starting to open, so we will keep him for the focal area. And again, I'm looking to continue that visual line through the middle, but by starting my rose in a different section, different part. So often with the guard petals on the outside, we encourage you to remove them because sometimes they can be damaged, and they are exactly what they say they are. They're guard petals, they're there to protect the main part of the flower. But for me, we have this very interesting shade of red, reddy pink on there, and I'm going to leave it on because I think it brings in a little bit of extra dimension to my design. And what I think I'm going to do with the roses is just use 3 of them more towards the focal point. And that one for me is a nicer shape than this one here. It's a more rounder shape. That one, as it starts to open, is starting to look a little bit scruffy. And this one could be my focal flower there at the front. So again, we have a link between the flowers as they move from one side of the design to the other. And now we look at putting in our Gerbera. So again, a really pretty pale Gerbera. This one is called Moet. And I don't want this one to start in the same position as my rose. Otherwise, they're going to fight for attention. Again, I've got myself 5 of the Gerbera. I might only use 3 towards the centre. We'll see now how it comes together. Now that one just happens to be facing forward a little bit. That's the way it's been conditioned in the box. So this one would make an ideal flower for my focal area there in the middle because it is angled forward. And again, I'm just going to play around with them so that I don't lose that line effect. I don't want this centre part of the arrangement to become very visually heavy. I think we're going to have to move this one slightly because I don't like where it's positioned. There we are, that's better. So what we need to be careful of with the Gerbera is because it's a round shape, it's far more dominant than the lines on either side. So I need to be careful that I'm not creating too much emphasis on this centre section here. I need the eye to be moving from one side to the other. So if we have a look here at this leucodendron that's at the bottom section here, I think this has moved as I've been arranging, and it's now angled in the wrong position, and it's making your eye lose that line that we're trying to create, that diagonal line. Yeah, so that's looking quite nice. I'm quite pleased with the way that's turned out. My only concern is that I have quite a dominant section here in the middle, and I'm almost losing the colour of the Bullrushes on the outside because this is tending to be far more dominant. So the design is only tending to look like it's this long. So for me, my container is looking visually quite dominant. So I need to bring something at the back here, which is going to extend the eye out and make the colour more dominant here at the back. So I think what I'll probably do is look for another 2 of the leucodendron, or maybe some extra of the Cordyline. So we'll just pop off now and get 2 of those, and then I'm going to be more pleased with the balance, the visual balance of the design. So I've decided to use another piece of cordyline, and you'll see with this one that even though it's from the same pack of foliage that I ordered in, this has a slightly more pinker tone to it. It's not quite as brown as the original pieces. But it does work really well with my rose because I left that tint, that pinky tint on the end. So I think that's going to work quite well together. And these are a little bit longer than my original pieces, and hopefully what that will do now is accentuate that line away from the focal point a little more. And then I haven't got to worry so much about that centre section being so dominant. Okay, I think that's worked much better now. What that's done is it's strengthened the line right the way through to the outer edge. Much better. I'm far more pleased with that one. So hopefully you've enjoyed the diagonal arrangement and today's step-by-step tutorial. It's not the easiest of designs to create, but it is really quite elegant and attractive when it's finished. This week has been a strange week because we've had Valentine's Day in, so we're not posting videos on the right day, but hopefully we'll be back next week with a Monday and a Wednesday tutorial. And then of course, if you want to join us on Friday for our Friday flower talk, I'm going to talk through again the principles and elements of design and show you how they've been used in the various designs that I've created this week. So hopefully we'll see you all again soon. Bye for now, and thanks again for watching.